Well, good morning, everyone. Sorry for the delay. I was having a little bit of computer issues trying to log into this the webinar, and hopefully everything will go smoothly today. So we're just going to wait a couple of minutes, make sure that all the people registered are able to get in. People are trickling in just because it started a little late. So while we're waiting, I just want to remind you that we are recording the webinar, number one. Number two, if you do have questions, you can enter them in the question box. I will pause every so often and just kind of look at the questions and answer the questions, as they come in. And for right now, if you do have any questions, let me know, and we can go over some of the questions maybe before we start of the past couple webinars that we did. And the past two webinars that we did, if you weren't able to attend, that's okay, because we do put them on our YouTube channel, and we also upload them to the back end of our website, so you can download that that file and then play that video over. So that's what we're doing with this one. The last couple that we've done have been about lettering, small lettering, and 3D embroidery. And we're going to go over some more lettering. So we're even going to go over some more things in regards to lettering, as well as applique. So again, we're just going to wait a minute or so. If you do have a question, about the last couple webinars, or even if you have some feedback on what you'd like to see in future webinars, I'd love to see it. So I'm just going to go ahead and look. And so far, no questions. And you can also put stuff in the chat box, but the question box would be easier for me, just because I can see that come up. So I am going to go ahead and show my screen. Now, the other thing about your control panel on the right-hand side for the webinar, you can minimize it if it's in your way, and usually that is by an arrow pointing to the right, and it's on an orange square, and you can minimize your controls and hide that control panel so you can maximize your screen. So, all right. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start. So last time we did talk about 3D embroidery, and with 3D embroidery, kind of the settings that we need to do. We're going to review it real quickly, and also talk about how we do outlines on 3D embroidery. Typically, an outline on a 3D embroidery design, or typically their letters, you will want that to stitch first. Usually the outline does not have the foam underneath, and it's just kind of flat, and then the foam will go on top. So when we do the foam digitizing, we want to make sure that the border goes first, and then after the border, you can do a placement stitch like we did last time to show where the foam goes, but it's pretty much going to show you where the foam goes by the border already stitching. So it's not necessary to put down that placement stitch, because obviously the foam is going to go inside the border. So you do want to stop the machine after the border stitches if you don't do the placement stitch and then put down the foam. If you do the placement stitch, you can have the machine continuously sew after the border and then stop after the placement stitch. So what we'll do here is we are going to insert a letter, and we are going to, let's do a the Arial black. We'll do a size. Now I'm in inches, and let's do about a 2.4, and we will do the letter. Let's do something that's going to give us a little bit of a challenge, maybe like a F. And so after we set those text properties, when we type it in, those will have, or this letter will have those text properties. If you type it in before the text properties, you want to make sure that you left click, hold, drag, and highlight your letter, and then go to your text properties and change it. If it's not highlighted and you go in and change these text properties, it won't apply to the letters that have been typed. So we want to make sure that is highlighted. So we'll go ahead and press OK. And once we press OK, our letter is now in screen. We'll go ahead and hit the Go button. And with Go, we did put in the stitches, and it's just like a regular satin stitch. If I look at the 3D view, we probably have that that long stitch that's broken up, and it's because these are very long stitches. So before I start dissecting the design, I want to put the border on. And the reason is when we do dissect the design, we typically cut the lettering right here. And we usually cut it right here so that we can, put in our correct settings for stitching over foam. Now, when we do that and then we did an outline, it would actually put an outline around each shape that is seen in the design. So right now it's all one shape. And if it's all one shape, we can put an outline around it and it will go around the entire thing. Whereas if these were two shapes, this shape right here and this shape right here, it would put an outline around, completely around this shape, and then completely around this shape. So you would have some stitching going over on top of each other right here. So it's better to do the outline first, or digitize the outline first, and then go in and change the letter itself. So in order to create an outline, I am going to right click on the letter. When I right click on the letter, that letter is now selected. And with it selected, I can now input an outline. In order to input an outline, I can do a couple of things. And this is actually available in any view that you're in. Right now we're in the 3D stitch view. We could be in angle view, or we could be in the view outline. It doesn't matter. When we do make an outline though, I am going to show you in the outline view just because I think it's a little bit easier to see. We are going to reference this blue and white flashing line, which will also be kind of this black line that you see here. So I just switched to the view outline. You can also go up to view and change your views that way. So here's view stitch, and here's view outline. So no matter what view we're in, we can access the outline tool. And the view that you're in will show you up here, you'll have a different menu. Right here it says outline because I'm in the outline view. Let me go back to view and view stitch and see how it says stitch up here. So those are where our tools are for each view. And like I said, for this tool, it doesn't matter what view you're in of the three views, because in our tools, we have something called Create Outline from Area Edges. So with Create Outline from Area Edges, when I left click on that, I have a new box, dialog box that appears. And I just brought it over to the side so we can see it a little bit better. Create outline from area border. What's going to happen here is that it's going to create a line on this black, line right here. And that line will hold line stitch properties. So the line stitch properties, you can do run, double run, triple run, satin, motif, running cross, blanket stitch, and even sequence. That's not shown here, but you can change it to sequins. And sequins is like that round mylar kind of blingy. They're on a reel, and you can feed and sew them down. It's kind of specialty. Most people, or I shouldn't say most people, but there's a big majority that don't have it. It's kind of specialty stuff. So, but you do have the option if you wanted to put down sequins on a line. So with this, we are going to right now keep it as a satin border, and we can change this if we want. But as this with a satin border, we are going to put all of our lines on the outside border. If I did have a letter like an O where it had an inside border, I could do it on the inside border only. But most likely I would do all borders for something like that. So we can leave outside border, or we can choose all borders. If we do inside border, nothing will happen because it doesn't have an inside border. So you do want to be aware of what kind of letter you are putting an outline on. The width. Now this is going to mess me up because I don't usually work in inches, and I'm going to change that back. But our width is 0.039. Now that width, because we are creating a line, half of the satin stitch is going to go on one side of the line and half the satin stitch is going to go on the other side of the line. So it's basically going to take that, take the width, cut it in half, and go on either side. So we also have an offset, and the offset at 0 is going to put it on this black line. So it's going to put a line directly on top. Let's just see how this works. So once I press OK, you're going to see there's the outline. There's that line that we created. It's going to default to the same color I'm working on. So I'm going to hit go right now, and you're going to see it's going to default to the same color. Now it is a separate piece. So I can go here, and it is selected right now. And if I click on the color button, I can change the color and press OK. Now, I'm going to go back in and go to my view and view preferences and change my measurement to millimeters. So what we see here is that we did put an outline on it. It's about, I believe it's about 1 millimeter. And I'm going to zoom in as soon as turn off the 3D at the top here. I'll right click off to the side, and I'm going to right click here, and you can see this is the line, and half the stitches go on one side of the line and half the stitches go on the other side of the line. So with an offset of 0, and if we look at our F here, if I click on the F, there's the edge of the F, and there's the line. So it's sitting right on that line. So it's going to overlap a little bit. Now I'm going to go ahead and Control Delete. We're going to stay zoomed in on this F. I'm going to left click on the F. You can see there's a little bit of pull compensation right here. So that's what you see right there with the stitches that are kind of coming out. I am going to go to Stitch and Create Outline from Area Edges. So you see here, Create Outline from Area Edges can be in those 3 different views. So when I click here, I'll leave it at satin border, leave it at outside border, and the offset here, I'm just going to change to 1. Now again, I'm working in millimeters. If I put 1 here and I was working in inches, the program probably wouldn't like it very much. So just be aware of if you're working in millimeters or inches. So press OK. When I press OK, now that offset is above here. So it's offsetting outside 1 millimeter. I'm going to change the color, and it will automatically regenerate. And now you can see how it's now just kind of touching. And if I look at the outline view, here's my F, and here's that offset. So you can see that we can offset it. We can actually offset it positive or negative. So if I right click in here, this is a way also to do like double outlines. We can right click inside this letter. I can go up to outline, create outline from area edges. Let's say I want to offset it 2 millimeters. I can press OK. There's another offset there, and I'll change the color. Just going down to the bottom right side on my quick toolbar, press OK, and now I've got a couple of different outlines. Whoops, a little too much. So you can make several outlines on one thing just by changing your offsets. But I did want to show what offsets are and how they relate to the line. So I'm just going to Control Delete everything. And now I'm going to take the F, right click on it, and go up to Stitch, Create Outline from Area Edges. Now with foam, we typically have a pretty wide border. So I'm going to take that width and I'm going to, we have to look at how big our letter is. Our letter is, you know, a little over 2 inches, 2.4 inches. And so, you know, it's rather wide and tall. So with the width, I'm actually going to change it, and I can change it later in my settings, but I'm going to change it to about 3 millimeters. I'm going to leave the offset at 0 because I do want the outline to actually overlap quite a bit underneath. It's going to go underneath the satin stitches. Typically, we do the border after the inside, or you know, the fill of the F, but with foam you want it to stitch before, because typically it does not have the foam, or I'm sorry, the border does not have foam in it. So we'll go ahead and press OK, and I'm going to change the color just down at the bottom right hand side. I'll change it to white. We'll press OK, and now you see we've got a larger, or you know, a wider border. Now with this, let's go ahead and zoom in. I'm just going to zoom in on a portion here. I'm going to right click to deselect, and right now you can see it overlaps quite a bit. So right now it's stitching after the inside of the F. I want to take the border with it selected over here on my stitch sequence. I'll right click inside that area, or inside the frame. When I right click inside the frame, I'll say move to top. When I click on move to top, it moves it to the first position. So it'll move it to the top, and then it's going to stitch the blue of the F. So let's go ahead and zoom out. I'll right click off to the side, and now you can see that this blue is stitching over on top of that overlap of the border. If I want to change the width of the border and I want it to make a little bit thicker, I can left click on the F on the left hand side, or the outline, or I can right click on it on my screen. You just want to make sure that it is selected with the blue and white flashing line, or that it's right click selected. After it is selected, I will go to the property settings, or I can hit my space bar. I can left click here, and here we do have satin border. If we go up to the line tab at the top, this is where I can change my satin width. If I'd like it to have a wider, you know, to be wider, I can I'll type in 4 here, and I'll hit apply. I'll just move this off to the side and I'll hit apply, and you can see it makes it a bit wider. So, you know, one thing here, I see this maximum step at 6 millimeters. I don't like that. I'm not sure why that is a default here. I'm actually going to change that to 3. I'll hit apply. 6 millimeters for a maximum step is quite long. So I'm just going to bring that down. That's just kind of a side note. I can also go into my satin settings and change different things about the satin stitch as well. But remember, this is a line and not an area. So I'll go ahead and press OK, right click off to the side. Let's go ahead and zoom in, and we can now see, how much that is overlapping. So I see that's overlapping quite a bit. If I wanted to change the offset, I would have to go back in, delete this, and then make a new outline. And that's because you can't change the offset once it's set in there. So you just have to make a new one. So I'll right click off to the side, and I'm just going to pause and check and see if we have any questions. And so far, we are good. Okay, so now after I have my outline created, and actually to tell you the truth, let's go ahead, take this, delete it, and I'm going to make it with a little bit of an offset. So I'm going to right click here. Again, we're in the stitch view. I can go up to stitch and get those tools. Now another way I can get my tools, and again, no matter what view I'm in, once you have the area selected, if you right click again inside that area, you can go to the tools, or you can grab those tools. So I'll have create outline from area edges, and I am going to make the width 4. I'm going to have an offset, a positive offset of 1, and press OK. Now it's offsetting, and I'm going to change the color, press OK. And now let's make sure that it stitches first. So with it selected here in my stitch sequence bar, I'll right click and say move to top. Right click off to the side. So we can see that now it looks a little bit wider. It's the same stitch width, but it looks wider because my offset is now, it's offset. And if we look at the outline view, you can see that it is offset. If you do ever want to change the outline, I can see that maybe it might be a little bowed here. I want to change things. I still can go into my outline view and change anything that I want. So right now I am in the outline view. You can see up here, my outline view is selected, or I can go up to view and view outline. I can go in here to my outline and edit outline mode. And I still have tools that I can, change this. I just right clicked, hold and drag. I can select a node. So all these tools are still available even after you create an outline. So, maybe I just want to move things around a little bit, make them a little bit straighter. And these are just left clicks on the node. And then I can also, do right clicks. Right click, hold and drag is going to allow me to kind of bow it or make it a little bit more straight. So we can go in here and we can clean up anything that we want. So I'll go ahead and generate my stitches, and you can see now it is still overlapping a little bit, but not as much. So let's go ahead and zoom the whole design. So after I have the outline created, that's when I want to go and start changing my design to accommodate for foam. So let's say with this F, like we did before, we would want to cut off this piece right here because we want the stitching. We don't want to have an underlay. We don't want to have any travel stitching and things like that. And then we would want to cap these off. If we go in and I'm going to go to the outline view, I'm going to right click inside my area, and I do get my tools. I'll go to divide with line. By dividing with line, I can start outside the area, left click, go straight down and outside the area, left click, and then hit enter on my keyboard. And it looks like maybe I was too far inside. Left click here, enter. Press escape to get out of the tool. I'll right click off to the side to deselect, And before I generate stitches, I do, especially when I'm doing something like this, I like to go in and make sure this is nice and straight. Because if I look at it, see how there's a little bit of a, it kind of extends a little bit right here. So before I generate my stitches, I like to make sure this is nice and straight, because otherwise it's going to put some vertical stitches right here. And that's because that's what it was doing on this side right here. So I am going to, with it right click selected, and I am in my outline view, I do have a tool under outline, adjust with a line. If I left click here, I'm going to start above that area that I cut, left click, and then end below it, left click. So I'm setting 2 points of the line that I'd like to adjust. So I have isolated the segment, put my cursor over the segment that I want to adjust, and it turns blue. Once it's blue, I left click, and now it's nice and straight. I press escape to get out of the tool. And now I'm going to right click inside this guy right here and make sure he overlaps. So I'm going to zoom in, and I am going to go to my edit mode. I'll right click to deselect that zoom in tool, and then, bring that over, a bit, trying to keep it nice and straight. Left click on this one, left click, hold, and drag. So all I'm doing is left click, holding, and dragging. Now I'm going to hit A on my keyboard, which is zoom all, and then generate my stitches. So now you can see I have 2 shapes. So let's make this guy invisible, this outline here. So if I started to, dissect this before I made the outline, and now I try to make the outline and I select these 2 pieces and go up to Stitch, Create Outline from Area Edges. I'm just going to leave everything at default so we can see it. Press OK. Let's change the color. And OK. Now I've got an outline around this piece right here and an outline around this piece right here. So that's why I would want to create the outline with the F being one piece altogether. So we'll delete that. And I'll turn this back visible. So with this, now I would start creating that, for the foam properties, changing the density, making sure we've got caps here on this one, and this one, and, really making sure that we don't have any travel stitches or anything like that. So that's why we want to create the outline first, and then we want to create the foam afterwards. Now I have seen things too where people are doing foam on the outline and doing a regular like satin stitch on the inside. So in that case, you would want to reverse the outline here, and you would want the outline to stitch last, and then make your appropriate changes for your stitching. So I'm going to pause now and see if we do have any questions. If you do have a question, please go ahead and type it into the question box. And I apologize, I do have a little bit of a cold, so I'm sniffling. All right, so no questions so far. All right. So what I'd like to talk about next is building blocks, and sometimes we do buy fonts that are pre-digitized, and with those pre-digitized fonts, they're typically stitch file format. And with it being stitch file format, we would, instead of going to our insert text tool and just typing in our letters, we would have to insert them one at a time. There is a way that we can import our lettering and bring them in as or save them as building blocks. And building blocks are kind of little design, little design elements that you can add into your embroidery design. I like to use these if I have like a symbol or something that I'm using quite a bit of. Instead of opening it every single time into my design, I can just drag and drop it into my screen. So traditionally, if I had, let's say I had to design a trademark or a register mark, I would have to go to File and Open to Current, and then find the design. Let's say here's the design I want. I'll press OK, and then it's brought in to my, I'll just delete that. It's brought in now to my current design. But there's a way that I can actually just do it right within the software. So I'm going to close this out and hit No. I'll go to File and New. Now our building block toolbar is at the bottom. If it's not open, mine's not open right now, you can go up to View, Toolbar, and then Building Block Bar. So building block bar, you do have a lot of pre-done, designs that are in here. You have all these little categories at the top here. There's several that I've actually made myself. Like this one is emblems. So if let's say you're doing a rocker and this is a shape that you use all the time, you can just take this rocker, left click on it, left click, hold, and drag into your screen, and now it's just there. Instead of always having to go and grab it, find it from your library or find it from your file folders, you can just grab it from here. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you how we can take a file and save it as a building block. I'm going to hit delete right now. You can also take building blocks, and here's some that are edges, and I can take this and actually bring in a block continuously. When I left click on it, it selects it, but when I left double click, it will pop it into my screen with a red outline. And this is where I can enter in multiple. You'll see that it's connected to my cursor, and when I left click dragged it into screen, it just brought one in at a time, which is good for lettering. But if you wanted to create a design where you wanted multiple of these, little designs, you could bring it in with a double click. Now, when you double click on it, your cursor is now connected to the left node or the left anchor point. If I go ahead and left click one time, you'll see my cursor now moves to the right hand side. So it has anchored it on the left hand side. And now I can move the mouse around and I can rotate it. I can also right click and mirror it. So right clicking will mirror. By doing one left click, we did the first anchor. Now doing another left click, we will set the second anchor. Now if I want to keep going, I can, maybe move this to the left a little bit, left click, and left click. And I'm actually not moving my mouse now, left click, and I am just creating a nice border here. If I'm finished, I'll hit escape to get out of the tool. So again, with this, if you just left click on it and then left double click, here it is in my screen. I can do a left click, I'll do a left click, and now a right click, left click, left click, left click. I can even right click before I do my anchor point. So you can do a lot of different things with this. Press escape to get out of the tool. So I'm just going to go ahead and select all these and hit delete on my keyboard. Examples of why people use this. I I had a company that does a lot of car logos, and they will just, have all the different car company logos. They'll have like Ford, Chevy, BMW, Audi, and just inside of a, one of these categories. You can make your own categories too. So you can see too that you've got these little arrows on the right-hand side where you can, add new ones. You can, I'm sorry, the arrows will allow you to kind of scroll, but these tabs, you can add as many tabs as you want. Again, there's tabs that are already in here, and there's tabs that you probably don't have that I have. So let's go in and start bringing in an alphabet. And this is going to be like a DST alphabet. So if I would like to make a new tab on any one of these tabs, it doesn't matter. If I right click on it, I would go to Insert Page. Left click on Insert Page. Oh, I'm sorry, it's Add Page. I always get mixed up with that, sorry. Right click and Add Page. When I click on Add Page, it asks me what new page name I want to input. Typically, I will name this, accordingly. So we are going to bring in a fishtail font, and I think I can't remember if there's a left, middle, or right, but it's okay because we can also edit the name of the page. So I'll just type in fishtail and press OK. Now you can see I have the fishtail tab here, but nothing's in it. So we need to import each letter, and this does take some time on the front end, but down the line when you're going and designing, it's going to take a lot less time to design it than bringing in one at a time through our import. So with the import, I've got the little sewing machine with a drop down arrow next to it. I'll click on import, open DST or EXP. I have a folder called fishtail, and actually nope, it's not in there, it's under embroidery fonts. Here's the fishtail. I've got 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I'm going to do the 4-inch. Here's the DST format. I'm going to select A and hit open. And there is my A. Now this is the 4-inch, so I am going to come over here to the fishtail, right click on it, and rename the page. And I'm going to name it fishtail-4-inch. Okay. So after I have that, I will go to accessories, then scroll down to building block, and scroll over and down to save building block. When I click on that, I can see all my different categories. I would left click on fishtail, and in the file name, I'm just going to name it A. Press OK. Now you're not going to see it in here because we have to refresh it. So I'm just going to click on a different category at the bottom and then click on fishtail, and now you see my A's in here. Now I can take that, delete it, and then I will go to import again. I will go ahead and bring in the B. Press open. Sometimes I have to hit the generate button. So there's my B. And I will go to accessories, building block, save building block. I put it in the fishtail 4-inch. Now make sure that your file name is different because it always defaults to the last one you put in. Press OK. Another thing you can do now, so I'm going to refresh this. One thing that you can do is that you can make these all the same color. When they import, they usually are imported different colors. And you can see, you can also change things about it if you want. So like, for example, this font does not have these trims here, so I can input the trims as I'd like. And now I can go to Accessories, Building Block, Save Building Block, go to the fishtail, click on the B, and I'll save over on top of it. Say yes. So you can make your changes however you want and then resave it as a building block. So I'm going to take this, delete it. Yes, I want to delete it. And we'll just bring in another one. So I'm going to import. Here's C. Press open. There's my C. Let's go ahead and put in some trims. And we will go to Accessories, Building Block, Save Building Block. And here's our fishtail. And I'll type in C. Okay. So after we do that, I'm going to refresh it. Now I've got A, B, and C. I'll delete this. And actually, let's just go to a new design. And you can see I've got A, B, and C. So if I want to create, a monogram, maybe that's CAC or something like that, I can take the C, left click, hold and drag, bring it up. Just click on the A, left click, hold and drag, bring it up. On the C, left click, hold and drag, and bring it up. Let's go ahead and zoom 1-to-1 so we can see the whole design. So instead of importing it one at a time, I'm now just dragging and dropping them into screen. Generate my stitches. So we can see they're also not lined up. If I want to make sure they are lined up, I can select all of them. So I can go to Edit, Select, and select all. And then I can make sure that they are lined up properly. Down at the bottom of my screen, I do have my object toolbar, and I want to make sure they're aligned horizontal center. So now they're lined up horizontally center. That would be with the middle node. And then I can also make sure that the horizontal space is correct. And that's between 2 or more objects because we have 2 spaces. I'm sorry, in between 3 or more objects. You have 2 spaces here, so let's make sure that the space is correct. And we click on horizontal space. So now it's nice and lined up. Left click off to the side. And we can go ahead and zoom out. Right click to deselect. And now I've got my monogram. And it's going to stitch in the order that I brought them into the program. So again, on the front end, it does take a little bit of time just to bring everything in. But once you have that all in, it's just easy to drag and drop into your screen. So let's go ahead and close this out. Close that out. And we'll go to a new design. So, I've even created, there's monograms that have been created, and I've got center, left, and right. And let's say I wanted to do, a monogram with this. Now, these are letters that have been created in the IDS program. So they're actually scalable and editable. Whereas these are DST files. Now, even though I brought them into IDS and saved them as building blocks, they are still DST files. So they're still going to have the same properties as a DST, even though they are building blocks. So when I bring it in, generate my stitches, you can see that these are locked. If I right click on it, it doesn't have a stitch type because it's unknown. It's actually stitch penetration points. So as far as you're editing with this building block versus this building block, this has been digitized in the program. I have more editing capabilities with these than I do with these. So if you do create something in IDS, let's go ahead and let's make something real quick. We'll go to insert lettering, and sometimes with lettering, like with these specialty letters, like like monograms, let's see. you want to kind of dissect the letter a little bit to stitch properly. So let's go ahead and just bring in this. Now this is not the best for embroidery. And the reason I say that is because it it looks very rough around the edges. I'll just go ahead and press OK. And the font is originally like that. And let's go ahead and look at the outline view. The font is originally like that. I mean, that's the way the font is. If I go ahead and put stitches in it, and if we stitch this out, a lot of customers would probably be, kind of besides themselves, like, why does it look so rough? And it's because the lettering's rough. So not all fonts are created the same in that, not all fonts are going to be good for embroidery. You do have to look at how the shape is. And if that shape is not good and we put stitches in there, that's what it's going to look like. It's going to look all jaggedy. Now, if they want it, that's great. But if they don't want it like that, then, you need to make sure that they know the font is like that. Or you need to go in and smooth things out. So let's just say I take this, I created it, I cleaned it up, blah, blah, blah. And I want to save this as a new building block. If I want to put in a new category, I would right click here and select add page. And I would put in, let's call this, I forget the name of it, but I'll call it rough one. And then press OK. Now I go up to accessories, building block, save building block. There's my rough one, and I name this F. And press OK. Now it's in there, but I do have to kind of refresh that. So there's my F. So whatever you do in here and that you create and you say, or I'm sorry, that you create in IDS, you can save as a building block. If you want to delete the folder or actually hide it, if you right click in here, you can hit delete page. It actually doesn't completely delete it. It's actually still in your building block folder on the back end of your computer. So if you right click on here and you say insert page, here's your building block folder and here's that rough one, and I can insert it back in. So if you do have, so deleting actually doesn't do the, it doesn't actually delete it. It's kind of the same as hide page. So you can actually hide the page too. And if you want to add it back in, you can right click and select insert page. So insert page will insert a building block folder that maybe you have previously done, or maybe that you've gotten from someone. You can click on insert page. And actually for all of you guys, I'm going to go ahead and send you guys this emblems page, or this emblems building block folder. It is a really nice folder, and what I'll do is I'll send it to you in a zip file or a self-extracting zip file, and it will unzip it to the appropriate folder. The folder that it goes in is within your IDS folder in the building block folder. So in order to bring it into your building blocks, you would have to go to insert page, find the emblems folder, click on it, and then press OK. Since I do already have it in here, I'm not going to input it. So in the emblems, I just want to show you a couple things about it. You do have basically two versions. You have a area and you have a line. And what's nice about both is that, they have different settings. So with an area, if I left click, hold and drag and bring it in, there's my area. And I'll bring in the same one as a line. Now they pretty much look the same. An area though, if we look at the outline view, you'll see the area looks much different. The area is is a closed shape. A line is not a closed shape, it's just a line. So when we go to the properties of a line, and I left click, I can change it to a run, a double run, a triple run, and I can even go up right now it's on the border, satin border. I can even go up to the line tab and change that satin width to be much wider. Let's go ahead and change it to be 5 millimeters, press OK, and now that's much thicker. Whereas this one, I can't really change the thickness of it because it is a closed shape. I can't go, if I go here, I have area object stitch properties, and I don't have a line tab where I can extend the width. I could go into the pull compensation and extend that a little bit, but that's not the same. You know, extending the pull compensation will extend it on both sides, but you know, that is just pull compensation. It's not necessarily width. So what's nice about this area, or I'm sorry, this line, is that I can also change it into a run stitch. So now I have a run stitch. With this one, I can't necessarily do that run stitch, but what I can do is I can do a complex fill, whereas this one I really can't. I can do a lot of different fill types on this because it is an area. So when I right click on this, go to the property settings, you can see it says area object stitch properties. Whereas when I right click on this one and go to the stitch settings, I have line object stitch properties. So what's nice about having both of these is that you can actually create an applique in the same way. What we can do is, I'm going to go to the outline view so we can see it a little bit better, but I will select both of them with a Control A, and I will go down to the Properties toolbar and align vertical center and align horizontal center, so they're both lined up properly. Now, this line is just on the outside right here. So it's just going to be on the edge of that satin stitch right there. So what I can do is I can left click on it and I can make it a little bit smaller, and I'm going to hold my shift key. Whoops. I'm going to hold my shift key, left click, hold and drag, and I'm bringing it inside so it's keeping it center. So that could be my placement stitch, but of course I would want that to stitch first. And I know I'm getting ahead of myself here, so I apologize, but in a sense you can kind of create applique with both of these. So for you guys coming, I'm going to give you these emblems, and they were created in IDS, so they are completely scalable. So if I took this guy, bring him up here, and let's zoom quite a bit out. And actually, I will bring in the line too so you can see what happens when I do scale them. I will select them both with a left click, hold and drag. And I'm just going to go to the resize box here, and with Y, let's go ahead and change that to 150. And that's roughly 6 inches. I'll press OK. And now I'm going to generate my stitches. See how the left one kind of maintained that width, but the right one maintained the width of what was set in the line tab. So if we look at these, when I right click inside here and go to my stitch settings, the line tab, the satin width is still 3. Whereas this one, since we changed the size, the width got bigger because we changed the size of it. So in order for this one to match this one, we'd have to change the width accordingly. And let's just see what, I'll take the ruler and I'll just get a rough estimate, about 10 millimeters. So if I right click on this and then go to my stitch settings, I'll go to the line tab, change that width to 10, apply that, and okay. It's a little bit thicker, but so now they kind of match. The other thing about an area versus a line is that an area, you do have control over stitch angles. So I'm in my angle view, I can change my stitch angles. This one, the stitch angles are going 90 degrees according to the line. So you don't really have control, much control over your stitch angles on that, but you do on your area. Okay, so I'm going to pause again and see if we've got any questions. And looks like we don't have any questions. So either we're really tired or I'm doing an awesome job, right? Okay. Or just nobody's paying attention. But I'd hope that I'm doing an awesome job. Anyway, okay, so on to the next thing. Actually, any questions over creating the building block? This is, quite helpful when you do have, fonts that you've purchased. And what I'm going to show you is also some Stalls fonts. So, all right, so you said both. I'm guessing I'm doing a good job and everybody's tired. I know I'm a little bit tired. My baby is sick, and so he was up a lot last night. So if I'm rambling, I apologize. Okay, so we're going to close this out and we're going to go to new design. We are going to create, actually, I'm just going to delete, well, it doesn't matter. We're going to add a page and I'm going to call this Stalls. I believe they have a varsity font. I press OK. So these are purchased fonts from Stalls, and these are Applique. So I'm going to do the same thing as far as importing, where I go to the import icon, and I'm going to look into my embroidery fonts. I've got my Stalls. I believe it's in auto stitch, varsity letters, DST files, and they've got satin and zigzag. So, and they also have different sizes. Let's do the 6-inch. And we'll do one color. So here's the A, and I will open it. So when I bring it into my screen, now these are typically pre-cut letters. Let's go to zoom the whole design. So with these pre-cuts, we don't necessarily need the second set of stitching, or the second step, I should say, for applique. Applique is typically done as a 3-step process: a placement stitch, a tack down stitch, and then a cover stitch. The placement stitch, let me go ahead and make these invisible. The placement stitch is going to be typically a running stitch, the exact shape and size of your letter or of your applique area. With that exact shape and size, it's going to lay this running stitch down on your fabric. And at that point, there's a color change. Typically with that color change, we are inputting a stop onto our machine. That way it does the running stitch, stops, and then you put down your applique letter. So we typically take the letter, we take some spray adhesive, and spray the back of it. Don't do it near your machine, and also make sure you're doing it in a well-ventilated area, because some of that stuff can be pretty potent. So after you spray it, you'll move the hoop out and lay down the material right in line with this placement stitch. Now, after you have the placement stitch and your letter down, you need to move the hoop back. And on the ZSK, if you press and hold that blue button with the pantograph movement, that will bring it back into position. Then after that's in place, you hit start again, and the second step, which we don't have in this design right here, is a tack down stitch. The tack down stitch will tack down that fabric with either like a straight stitch or an open zigzag stitch. And that will, again, be a different color so that you can input another stop after it tacks down. So the tack down stitch is usually there to adhere and keep that letter or that shape in place. And if you don't have pre-cut or you need to cut the material on your hoop, you can cut it after the placements, I'm sorry, after the tack down stitch. The tack down stitch typically goes a little bit to the interior of the shape. And that's because, you know, this stitch right here is the exact shape and size, whereas, you know, the tack down is going to go just to the interior and then get covered by the cover stitches. So the next thing is the cover stitches here, and I'm going to input a trim right there. The cover stitches are going to go along the edge of our shape, and you know, it'll do two things. It'll adhere the material to the fabric or to what is hooped, and also it will cover up the tack down stitch. So typically we want that tack down stitch to be covered up by this satin stitch right here. You can see that that's the placement stitch. The tack down stitch would typically be on the interior. So if we want to save this as a building block, again, I'll go up to Accessories, Building Block, and then Save Building Block. There's Stalls Varsity. I want to type in A right here and press OK. So here, there's my A, and also I would like to rename this page and make that 6. Okay. Now let's do a couple more letters. So I can select this, delete it, and I can import. It goes back to my folder, and I am just going to start doing actually my initials. So we'll go to the B, that's my last name, Marito, open that, and in here, let's generate the stitches. I'll input the trims, and now, and I don't need a trim here because, you know, my fabric's going to be on top of it. So now I will go to Accessories, and then Building Block, and Save Building Block. I will name this B. Press OK. Take that, delete it, and then import another one. The last one would be M for my middle name. Press Open. And then I will go ahead and go to Accessories, Building Block, Save Building Block. Go into the Stalls Varsity 6, type in M. Press OK. So now, if I go back, you know, I refresh that Stalls Varsity, I now have the A, B, and M. So I'd like to do my initials, though, you know, not the monogram way, but typical way. And I will bring up the A, and then I will bring up the M, and then I will bring up the B. So I'm doing it in the order that I'd like it to sew. But we're actually going to have to change this order and actually change the colors too. So I'm going to zoom the whole design. And if this, after I'm done with the building blocks, if it is in your way, you can right click on any one of these icons here and turn off the building block bar until you need it again. You know, you can toggle it on and off because it does take up quite a bit of real estate. So let's take all of our letters. I can hit Control A on my keyboard, which selects all. With them all selected, I will go ahead and align the object center and also the even spacing. So I've got everything spaced properly, but in actuality, I want all the placement stitches to go first. Right now, it's stitching placement A, cover A, placement M, cover M, placement B, cover B. So really, it would take a lot longer to do it this way than it would be if I took the placement of the A, M, and B all as one and the cover stitches all as one. So the first thing I'm going to do is move all the placement stitches together. I can do it a couple different ways. I can take the M. So if I look at this, there's the placement of the A and then cover. Placement of the M. Okay, let's take the placement of the M and have it go before the cover of the A. So in here, while it's left click selected, I can either right click and say move to, and I want it to move before index number 2 right here. So if I type in 2 right here and press OK, Now it moves it to the second position. So I've got placement of the A, placement of the M. Now let's take the B. The other way I can do this is left click on it. Once it's left clicked, I can then left click, hold, and drag and bring it into position. Where that kind of stripe highlights, it's going to go in between 2 and 3. Let go of my left click, and now I can see that it does the A placement, M placement, B placement. But they are all 3 different colors. I want them all to be the same color because I don't need the machine to stop in between. So I can simply take out the color just by removing the rainbow. The rainbow is a color change. So I can have the A stitch, take out the color change, have the B M stitch, and take out the color change. So the placement of the A, M, and B are all the same. Then it's important to have the color change because that's where we need to input the stop. So we can put our letter or our fabric down and then have it stitch on top. So if we want all the lettering cover stitches to be the same, you can do the same thing. Remove the color change. And it looks like if we remove the color change here between the A and the M, it'll turn black. Same thing here. And I can also input the trims in between each one. So now I right click off to the side to deselect. It used to be a 6-color design because each step was a different color and each letter was a different color. So now it's only 2 colors. So it's going to stitch the A, M, B, color change. So that's where we put a stop in the machine. And then after we put down our fabric, move it back into position, and then put the and then start it again, it will do the cover stitch. So now I have, that's kind of a nice way to do the applique or have the applique, have this lettering as building blocks, because you can go in, align it, design it as you want, and then change around the stitch order. So if we look at that, that's basically ready to go. I just export it. To export it, you just go to Export, Save, DST. And here, I'm just going to put it on, I will put it, I don't have a USB in here. You could put it in your network folder if you are networked. Actually, I am networked. So I am going to go to my C drive and put it in my ZSK folder. And now I can name it AMB, hit save. And now it's in that folder in my shared folder. So now if I want to pull it from the from the computer, if I'm on the machine and I want to pull it from the computer, I can now do so. Or if I'm doing it with a USB, just make sure that you are exporting to a USB. I can also look at my print preview. Let's go ahead and click on print preview here. And this might be good to print landscape. So let's go ahead and preview. And let's go to the next page. Okay, so it's across 2 pages because it's so big. But you can see here the color sequences. The first color is your placement, second color is your cover stitch. So, all right. So any questions? We have a quiet group this morning. All right. So we'll continue on. So one thing that I did want to talk about too is talking about digitizing for caps and a kind of stitch order, since we are talking a little bit about stitch order here. I'm going to go to a new design and I am going to go ahead and type in some letters. Definitely don't want this guy. And we'll type in about 32. Oops. And I'll go ahead and press OK. So here's our lettering for caps. I'm also going to put an outline on it, and I'm going to right click, hold, and drag, select all my letters. I will right click inside one of the letters and create outline from area edges. I will go ahead and do all borders because I do have the inside of an A and a P. I'll go ahead and press, I'm going to make this 1.25, oops, and make the offset just a little bit. Press OK, and I am going to change the color. Okay, so we do have an outline and lettering. With cap digitizing, you typically want to start in the center and move outward on either side. So with this, I would stitch the A first, and then the C, and then the P, and then the S. Now, since this does have an outline on it, the best way to stitch anything with an outline on caps as well as jacket backs, and the reason I say jacket backs is because with jacket back hoops, you have a lot more play in the hoop than you do on a smaller hoop. So with caps, you are stitching on a curved surface. So typically the rule of thumb with caps is bottom up, center out. And as soon as you do an area on a cap, you also want to do the detail immediately after, because there's going to be more shift in your fabric because one, there's less holding the cap as far as the hoop goes, and two, you're stitching on a curved surface. Where the driver is rotating rather than moving left to right. So you're going to have more push and pull you're dealing with. So again, even though it's bottom up, center out, you also want to do the detail as close as possible to the area, or the outline as close as possible to the area, so that you are avoiding all that movement. So if you were to stitch the lettering and then the outline, most likely you're going to have a shift. And so it's important, again, to stitch the area and then the outline. We can do this a couple of different ways. I want to stitch the A and then the outline of the A. So sometimes what I'll do is I will just start moving everything to the bottom in the order I want. So I want to stitch the A first. I left click inside the A and then right click and say move to bottom. And then I have the outlines here. I've got the inside and the outside. So I take number 5, left click on that, hold my control key, left click on 6, and then I'll move that to bottom. So what I'm doing is I'm taking each one in the order I want to go and move them to the bottom. So as I move things to the bottom, it starts shifting up. So I'll take these two, I hit control and left clicked on both of them. Now I let go of the control, right click inside one of the frames, doesn't matter which one, and then move to bottom. Then I'm going to scroll up here. There's the C. Left click on the C, then right click, move to bottom. So you can see how things are starting to shift up. Take the outline, right click, and move to bottom. I'll take the P. So I went from the center, the A, to the C, and now I'm going to go back to the center, the P, and then the S. So right click on the P, move to bottom, scroll up. I've got the outside and the inside. I'm going to hold my control key and left click inside each one, let go of the control key, right click, and move to bottom. And then the S, these two are right next to each other, so I can left click inside this one, hold the control, left click inside this one, right click, and move to bottom. So you can see now the A is stitching first. So even though we started moving it to the bottom, I'm just moving them all and shifting it that way. The other way that I can do this is, let's go ahead and undo all that fun stuff. The other way I can do this, so it's in its original position, is I can, let's go ahead and zoom in, I can go up to Accessories, Set Stitching Order. Now, in Set Stitching Order, I usually like to do this in the outline view because it's a little bit easier to see. So I'm going to switch to outline view. It got me out of the Set Stitching Order tool. So I'm going to go to Accessories, and then Set Stitching Order. I like to do it this way because I just like viewing this in the kind of the outline shapes. I can better see my lines and areas. So my cursor's a little hand right now, and if I place my cursor inside the A, because I want the fill of the A, and left click, it will highlight it and say number 1. So it's going to stitch first. And then I can come down here to that outline and left click and say 2, and left click and say 3. If I come in, and then I can go to the next one. Now, if I come here and I accidentally select that, number 4, I can see that's the outline. I don't want the outline first. I'll just hit my backspace key and I can go back one at a time. So I'll go inside here, left click 4, left click 5, left click 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now, once I'm finished, it's important to hit enter. When I hit enter, it will redo, you can see on the left-hand side here, the order exactly how I set it to be. So I'll right-click off to the side and generate the stitches. You can see here, this is really bothering me, that outline is a little wonky as far as the stitches go. So what I'm going to do is I can see that outline right there needs a little bit of cleanup. I'm right-clicked on it. I'm in my outline view. I'm going to go to the edit mode, and here I'm just going to right-click and delete the point. I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. And right-click and delete this point. And now when I do that, it looks much better. Again, my angles are only according to the line. I don't have control over the stitch angles on my lines. I can change the lines to areas if I want, or I can go in and kind of clean up the line, like down here. I can see that I need to clean that up. I go to Edit Outline Mode. I'll bring this down a little bit. I could even left click. So I can do it this way, and that cleans it up. Now another thing I can do is actually change this line to an area. I'm going to copy this and go to a new design and paste it. So right now I have that line. If I right click here, when I right click and have it selected, I'll go to the outline view, and I will go up to outline and create area from line. Now what this will do is it'll create an area on top of the line, and I just have to define how wide I want the area to be. So remember with the emblems, you saw that there was a line and then there was an area. So the area width, however wide you want it to be, let's say I want it 1.5, I'll press OK. It will put an area right on top of the line, and I will go ahead and hit go. Let me change the color. Oops. Oh, they're all grouped as one. So let's go ahead and go to Edit, Group Ungroup, left click off to the side. And now you can see one is an area and one is a line. If we look at the outline view, that's where we can really see the difference. So that's how you can actually change an area or change a line into an area. You can also take an area and change it to a line. So when I'm right-clicked on this area, I'll go up to Outline and create Line from Area. Now it'll try to create the best fit line according to the area. And you can see that it needs a little help, but there's your line. You can hit go. Let's go ahead and change the color. And, we could definitely go in and, clean things up. But there are ways to convert areas to lines and lines to areas. It does take a little getting used to as far as how it actually works. But typically, if I do have a line and I want more control over it, I will turn it into an area. But the thing of it is that you do have to make sure that you know how wide you want that area. So let's take this. Oh, and they're still grouped. So let's go to Edit, Group, Ungroup. So these two are lines. These two could be, both satin, both running stitches, so on and so forth. So it looks like we have questions. Actually, other way seems easier. Yeah, it just depends on what you're doing. You could also take this and create an outline to create a line. So this is an area. And if I go to create outline from area edges, I could do this way and do a negative. Let's see, no, we want to do inside border because it does have the inside of the P. And I can do a negative offset, maybe of 0.5, press OK, and then it actually creates a line. So that's another way to create a line. And again, they're grouped. So we'll go to Group, Ungroup down here. So it actually did a better job if you do create outline. So creating a negative offset, put it inside because I took the interior outline, or I'm sorry, the interior area, created a negative offset so it went inside the stitching, and I did it at negative 0.5. Negative 0.75 would have been in the middle because this is 1.5 millimeters wide. So lots of different ways you can play with things. Just knowing what these tools do is going to be really helpful. So the question, you had a question about how did you get the mindset from millimeters to inches and inches to millimeters. I actually started with millimeters, so millimeters has kind of like just been embedded in my head. But there are a lot of good resources. If you go on Google and just get a, let's see, let's get a new window here. If you go to millimeters to inch chart, there's a lot of good charts here that you can print out and put next to your computer. So this one, probably not so much this one, but there's ones that are really, really nice like this. I like this one. So you could print it out, put it next to your computer. I usually suggest print it out, laminating it, and put it next to your computer because I know with my desk, things can get coffee spilled on them or water or whatever it may be. I hope that you guys liked this webinar. Next webinar is, I believe, is in September, September 12th, it looks like. And we also have a trade show coming up in Orlando. That trade show is September 7th through 9th. It is the Imprinted Sportswear Show. So ISS shows, oops, too many S's. We do have Orlando, and This is the show site. We also have it on our website, ZSK Machines. And if you go to events, you have the ability to see contact and events, our shows coming up. So we have September. Oh, and it's not on there just yet. So we'll put that up there. Sorry about that. But yeah, we have that September 7th through 9th. If you guys are interested in coming, you can definitely click here. I think they have free registration right now. But if you need a link or a coupon code, just let us know. You can email me directly, Andrea@zskmachines.com. And they do have classes there and, a lot of good stuff there. So if you have any questions on it, give us a call or email. And we will be coming to California, and that will be in January. The ISS show in January, that's going to be Long Beach. And this is, where are the dates? It's usually the third weekend in January. Oh, there the dates are right in front of me. January 19th through 21st. And like I said, we typically put up the free registration passes there. But if you do need anything, you just let us know. So I hope you guys all enjoyed it. If you have any questions, email, give me a call. We'll send you a link with the webinar recording as soon as that is up. It does take a little bit of time, so just be patient. And I'll also send you guys those emblems. So I'll stop recording